Hi everyone, I'm Grant and this is Tony,
Hey everyone.
and we're going to go a little bit deeper into our exploration of what Tantra is, and we're going to talk about something that's really easy and simple to talk about. And I'm totally kidding because it's tricky, but it's fantastic stuff to speak about. And we're going to look at trauma. We're going to look at trauma, things like abuse and drugs and abandonment and isolation and loneliness and sexual trauma and all of that. So, Tony, what are your thoughts on that?
On trauma?
Yes.
Wow. We all have our own versions of it, you know, and I don't think you can compare one person's trauma to another person's trauma. I think it's a dangerous game to play, but we all have our own versions of trauma and then what we do with it, and how we respond to it and how we make peace with it.
Yep. Yes. So would you say that Tantra has helped you address trauma in your life?
Yeah, I have quite a large, my background is, being brought up in a highly religious Jehovah's Witness family, so a lot of, religious doctrine and religious repression, a lot of abandonment stuff through that religious side of the family. My mother, when she found out that I was gay, disowned me for 17 years.
Oh, wow, yeah.
My first sexual experience was masturbation, and was around guilt and shame because of my religious upbringing.
Yeah.
And then my first sexual experience with somebody else was rape. So I was 15 years old with that, and then from that came drugs, alcohol, that addiction pathway, and just lots of other things that had happened.
Yeah.
If I went into all of my trauma in detail, we'd be here all day and that would be boring. And like suicide attempts and drug overdoses and all that sort of stuff. And so Tantra has been an element of different modalities that I've chosen to tap into, but Tantra has been a way for me to come to peace with my trauma. And like you said it in your video, you come to a place with it where you come to love your trauma.
Yeah.
And I spent my whole life trying to get out of this body.
Yeah.
Tried to kill this body essentially to get out because I didn't want to feel anything.
Yeah.
But what Tantra has helped me do is helped feel it, love it, accept it, and then transition through to the other end where it has no effect on me in the same way. I'm not saying that the trauma is gone, because it's still there and I'm still talking about it now, and it's still a memory, and it still has times when it does impact on my life. But Tantra has helped for me to transmove, I don't know what the word I'm trying to say is to move through it in a more peaceful way, in a more accepting way.
Yeah. One thing I would say is I've watched you and how you teach, and the fact that you can draw on your experience of trauma has, helped you connect with other people who are in that same space. So in that way, the trauma itself is, dare I say it, a great gift.
I've said this in previous videos. I fully believe that my trauma is one of my superpowers. And as I look at my trauma now as a 51-year-old versus a 15-year-old, the 15-year-old version of when I was raped versus the 51-year-old version, and how I deal with it now versus how I deal with it back then is very, very different. And now when I come in contact with people, and I do a lot now that have been abused or raped, the level of compassion that you can have and supporting them to transition through their own grief and their own, it's a painful thing when you're violated by somebody like that.
Yeah.
Not only physically, but it damages you on a level that it takes a long time to unpack that damage, and Tantra has helped me unpack part of that damage, to sit with it with ease, and when there's an area of uncomfortability, Tantra has helped me to sit in the uncomfortability, sit in the tension of that uncomfortability, without trying to run away from it, or like shoot something up my veins, or have another drink, or eat another cupcake, or whatever the case may be, to stuff down the feelings. Tantra has helped me sit with it. Listen, I'm not perfect. I have moments where I wobble, but I go back to the fundamentals of what I've learned with Tantra, to sit in the uncomfortability of that tension.
That's beautiful, and I love what you say about the wobble too, because I actually think the wobble has a lot to teach us. And in the moment, where are we, and do we give in to the wobble, or do we move forward from it, or it's very much what I'm hearing from you is that Tantra has helped you to approach things very consciously.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, the wobbles are my consciousness going, are you paying attention?
Yeah.
And the wobbles are like, have you got complacent?
Yes.
And is your ego in check at the moment? And is your ego taking over right now?
Yes.
And so I see my wobbles now as a Christmas present. And as someone that was brought up Jehovah's Witnesses, we don't practice Christmas. But as a Christmas present, it's like, oh, okay, what's going on here? And it's taught me to go in and have a level of discernment around what the wobble is. Where is it coming from? And then making the choice to, what am I going to do with it from there? Am I going to allow the wobble to run out of control? Am I going to allow the wobble to take me down doing drugs again, doing alcohol, having sex? Am I going to go down that destructive pathway? Or am I going to choose something different? Now, I'm not saying that this different pathway is easy, because it has its moments where it's sometimes that is easier than going this way.
Well, in the first instance, and then afterwards the pain kicks in.
Of course.
So
there's always the payoff of that is more damaging. But I in the last decade have made the choice to come over this side and be like, okay, I'm going to face it head on. I'm going to look at it, I'm going to observe it, I'm going to reach out for support if I need it. Because the damage of that, doing that stuff, and the consequences of doing that stuff, just, it's not worth it for me anymore.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.